and they're fighting for survival. And I'm totally behind them, because this, I say, is a fight for the soul of India. It is a fight for the civilization and its values that has consciously stayed agrarian in spite of repeated attempts to dismantle our agrarian soul and leave us both desertified in terms of the soil and desertified in terms of our soul. So we are in a very, very critical juncture. And I've seen too many tricks played over these decades of work I've been doing. And I just hope all the strength stays with the farmers who have shown their strength so long. And they continue to say it's either yes to our demand of repeal the laws, or a no, in which case we will not go home till you repeal the laws.
It would be remiss of me not to acknowledge what is currently happening in India with the farmer protests, which is now being called the largest organized strike in the history of the world, with over 250 million participants. And so currently, farmers across India are protesting 3 agricultural bills. These bills promise liberalizations, but in reality, farmers will face the privatization of the agricultural sphere. There is a lot of resources online that one can read into if you're interested in learning more, because again, want to be mindful of time. But Dr. Shiva, as someone who has been an ardent supporter of small farmers as the key to sustainability and biodiversity, and you've been a champion against the corporatization of this sphere and corporate monopoly, what are your thoughts on the current situation and where do we go from here?
One, I've just put my analysis that I did for a newspaper on the 3 laws, as well as the books and some videos of the 90s and the protests of the earlier days, where the fathers and grandfathers of those who are leading the protests today used to march with us. 500,000 farmers in Bangalore at Cubbon Park, 200,000. You know, right now Rakesh Tiketh is on the streets, but his dad, Mahendra Singh Tiketh, used to be with us, and 200,000 at Red Fort, to say to the government that agriculture is too precious. It's about culture, it's about life, it's about food, it's about livelihood. It is not about trade in commodities. Now, the 3 laws were actually, the substance of these were crafted by the World Bank as part of the structural adjustment of 1991. World Bank has been trying very hard to get rid of the Essential Commodities Act, which we put in place in 1955, after the Great Bengal Famine of 42, which killed 2 million people. And it's all because the British were extracting and hoarding and trading and commodifying. People had grown the rice, there was enough rice, but 2 million people died because the British took the rice to make profits during those periods. And the women started a movement called Tebhaga. The second law, so it's been dismantled, you know, it's been changed to say you can hoard, you can profit, and the government won't set a price unless it becomes such a crisis. But if it's a crisis, then you can't really do anything about it. The second is dismantling the system that allowed to market their grain. Now, let me take you back to the Green Revolution. Here's the Green Revolution that says Punjab will grow grain for everyone else and it will only be rice and wheat. And rice is not a Punjab crop, but they were forced to grow rice. And now it should supply the whole country. 40% of the supply of food of India today, especially the public distribution system, is now grown by the farmers. Now, this grain had to be brought somewhere so the government could pick it up and supply it around the country. These were called the mandis. So the current act is in effect trying to hand over the trade to the giant corporations. The difference between 91, when the big corporations were the Cargills for grain and the Monsantos, the difference is today we have our own giants who all have partnership with global giants. They don't work alone. I mean, suddenly out of the blue, a Reliance cannot become a digital company without the help of Microsoft and Gates. They cannot become a grain company, or Adani can't become a grain company overnight. So they're becoming the front, just like when Monsanto entered, they entered behind Mahiko. They always find an Indian partner to hide behind. And the current protests are against the third law. So one is dismantling of the Essential Commodities Act, which means totally deregulated prices and a recipe for famine. This doesn't affect the farmer as much as the country. and the poor. The second is dismantling the regional system where states decided, and there were cooperatives of farmers and small traders, and there was a stock limit that goes, and the big giants can go by. But the third is the contract law. Now, all these three they've been trying to put in place since 91, but I always smile at the COVID, the little virus. I say so many racketeers hid behind you, COVID, to do things they could not do when democracy was vibrant. But the beauty of the protest today is, in spite of the lockdown, millions of farmers have shown how a vibrant democracy can look. So how did the contract farming begin? This will be interesting to you, Aditi, that it actually began back again with the crisis of Punjab. And here's the ad that our dear Pepsi put. What did they call it? Today, Punjab has the promise of 100 years of spring on Baisakhi Day. They started to try and get in from 86 onwards. The crisis is 84, 86 they try. They're given approval in 88. The entire system is changed for multinational entry. A new ministry is created for food processing. And to understand what farmers are against, let me give you a figure of Pepsi. So all of Pepsi's projects and contracts totally failed in Punjab. We've done many studies on this. They brought potato and they brought tomato. They'd pay farmers of Punjab 50 paisa. Farmers couldn't survive. And then they'd collect 10 rupees from the government to export ketchup. And they weren't allowed to enter in the name of Lays. They used to call it Leher in those days because of some restrictions. Potato, they moved out of Punjab, but they went all over. Their suicides among farmers of potato, locked into contract with Pepsi. Pepsi makes you pay 20 rupees for a junk food package. Farmer gets 0.04 rupees, 4 paise for the potato in that junk food package. And then they tried to sue. I was part of writing the laws for India. I worked with Parliament on the patent law. The agriculture minister invited me to draft the farmers' rights law. We are the only country in the world that has a law, the Plant Variety Protection and Farmers' Rights Act. And we put a clause, Article 39, that farmers are breeders, therefore, and their right to save, exchange, improve, sell seed can never be taken away. Pepsi sued 4 potato farmers of Gujarat last year for 40 million rupees. I sent this book to the lawyers and the judges, the book which has these laws, and Pepsi had to withdraw that case. But the farmers are totally rightfully rejecting these laws, and they keep saying that farmers are afraid. Farmers are afraid. No, farmers have experienced since 1991 the corporate hijack of their share of what the consumer pays, whether it's in clothing or it's in food. And they also know that if this down, and the prices have gone like this, with globalization, the price the farmer gets is going like this, the price the consumer pays goes up. And the Arab Spring was actually a bread riot because the food prices had jumped up. Now, farmers know if this system of deregulated commerce is pushed and no regulation is there, these prices are going to collapse and they won't be able to survive. And they're fighting for survival. And I'm totally behind them because this, I say, is a fight for the soul of India. It is a fight for the civilization and its values that has consciously stayed agrarian in spite of repeated attempts to dismantle our agrarian soul and leave us both desertified in terms of the soil and desertified in terms of our soul. So we are in a very, very critical juncture. And I've seen too many tricks played over these decades of work I've been doing. And I just hope all the strength stays with the farmers who have shown their strength so long. And they continue to say it's either yes to our demand of repeal the laws or a no, in which case we will not go home till you repeal the laws.